Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. Well, we just heard from the mayor of Burlington, and now we're going to hear from the mayor of Stratford, Dan Mathieson. Dan Mathieson is in his fifth term as mayor. Fifth term as mayor. Dan, how do you survive 5 terms?
Well, one more and you get paroled. But overall, it's gone okay. It's been a great experience, and it's my hometown, so I love it.
Well, I've been to the Stratford Festival on numerous occasions, to a couple of restaurants, but frankly, haven't spent a lot of time other than that in Stratford. A friend of mine had a farm just, I guess, south of town, very involved, Liberal for a long period of time, but I haven't spent time in the village. Anyway, Dan.
So that was Brian Innes.
That was.
No, Brian well. He was a great man.
He was. A shame that he left us way too early. Dan has served on numerous boards and committees in healthcare, municipal affairs, law enforcement, athletics, not-for-profits, universities, and colleges. He's currently chair of the Ontario Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, chair of King's University College at Western University. I dated a lady that went there. Chair of the Stratford Police Services Board, a member of the board of directors of the Festival Hydro and Rhizome Networks. What's Rhizome Networks?
Rhizome Networks. Rhizome is this type of plant that goes out with its root system, and it was the name we gave the utility in Stratford when we built the ubiquitous Wi-Fi over our entire city in 2010.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Board member of the Stratford Festival, obviously, and the advisory board of the University of Waterloo Stratford campus. He's also a governor on the board of iCanada and on the advisory board for Walsh University, an institute for the study of intelligent community. Dan, thanks so much for joining us. I wanted to check in and find out, what's it like being a mayor during COVID-19 and how you've been dealing with it?
So I would say, Brian, you start every year, whether your own personal business, your own life, or as mayor of the city, you set objectives for the year. To say that by the time the first quarter was over, we just threw them out the window and you change. Pandemic planning, well, many cities, and we're one of them, had one in our emergency plan. You quickly learn that all the things you anticipated happening never did, and all the things you didn't know were going to happen have. And you sit and try to figure it out. It has been emotional because you watch the economic challenges, you watch the social challenges and the medical challenges of your community. And it causes you to be pretty flexible in your thinking and change with the facts. And I think back in April, late March, early April, we were getting different updates every day from the federal and provincial governments, from the Prime Minister and the Premier, and we had to pivot and make decisions on a dime. And that's not the way government normally makes decisions. It's probably better that we were nimble like that, but it's just been challenging.
Stratford Festival obviously has probably suffered 100%, if not anything, decline in revenue. It's got to be devastating for the tourism business in Stratford.
Very much so. So in a normal year in Stratford, we'd welcome 1.5 million visitors to the community in a year. Roughly 500,000 of them would be ticket goers. Another 100 and some thousand would attend our summer music festival. Then we had a series of other festivals throughout the year and events, and then just people that wanted to day trip or come to Stratford for special times. We have built our economy. A major plank of it is around tourism and welcoming people from not only Ontario and Canada, but from the US and around the world to Stratford. To put it in perspective as well, the Stratford Festival, based on the Conference Board of Canada, generates 140 million of GDP for the local economy. And there's 3,000 jobs directly and indirectly that rely on the Stratford Festival. So to not have 13 productions this year, to not welcome the 500,000 ticket goers, and to not have the other, let's say 800,000 of the million come to the city has been an economic challenge for us.
What have you done? How have you dealt with it?
So it's interesting. Early on, we struck an economic recovery task force made up of over 50 volunteers from the community. We kept members of council out of it. In parallel, we set up what we call the City Initiatives team, made up of senior management. So the task force would take ideas from the community of things they thought we should do differently, try to attract people, how we could assist business and our arts and culture. They'd come up with a plan, they give it to the city's initiative team, who would say, okay, what are the regulations, the bylaws, all the things we need to put in place, and then send it on to council for review and approval. The nice part about it is it meant that all the ideas were grassroots. It meant that staff were looking at it from a lens of regulation and bylaw and how to make things happen. And the politics didn't get involved until it was baked and ready to go, and it was a yes or no. And that allowed us to counsel not to let decisions become political, and allowed the community and really the business community and residents to come up with some pretty neat ideas that have helped us weather this storm.
Give us a sense of some of those ideas, and what have you done? You know, Main Street restaurants have got to be devastated. The B&Bs, the hotels, the festival itself. What are they doing?
Yeah, so a couple things we did. First one was we have a beautiful market square and an incredible downtown core and great parks. We created what's called al fresco dining. So we bought brand new heavy-duty plastic picnic tables, great umbrellas, put them all in Market Square behind City Hall, 30 tables in all, put some more down on Tom Patterson Island in the park, had volunteers and staff clean them after each sitting, allowed local restaurants to, of course, serve takeout to those areas. We passed a bylaw with the support of the Alcohol Gaming Commission that allowed people to buy alcohol from local restaurants and to drink it in Market Square and in the park so that they could keep the average check size up and allowed people to be flexible. We also went out and took almost 100 parking spots out of downtown Stratford and gave them to local restaurants, built boardwalks around them so that people could take up the entire sidewalk and increase their seating capacity. We started another event called Street Side Live Music, which would be musicians in the back of a truck that would roll up somewhere, play some music for the entertainment of other people, and that happened in different spots throughout the core. And so we've done a number of those types of initiatives that, and those are just some of the highlights that have allowed us to really drive people from our homes downtown to support our businesses. If we didn't feel comfortable sitting on their patios, we could go sit in our own park-like setting. And it meant for people in the region that wanted to come in, they had a place to go, and that also fostered our local shops in our heritage downtown core and throughout the city an opportunity to, of course, sell some product.
What about the festival? I know they've been putting videos online of some of their past productions, but their revenue's gone to zero.
Yeah, so for the festival, having groups capped at 50 indoors has been a challenge. They scrubbed the season. Thankfully, they had the whole Shakespearean canon recorded in HD over the last number of years. So for the first while, they dripped out a different production every week or every couple of weeks for people to still have a sense they were attending Stratford. Now they've turned their attention to what will be the opportunity for next year. And as we head towards wave 2 of the pandemic, they realize that they're probably not going to have 13 productions next year. Probably half that would be great. They're going to have to look at alternate venues because if we still have caps on the number of people inside, they're going to have ideas around that. So they're looking at outdoor productions in either a tent or a canopy concept, how to make them shorter productions, maybe have produce them 2 and 3 times a day so that people can come and see them and not be indoors and different things. The theater is looking at, staring down a $20 million loss this year. Ooh, and that is a big loss. But thankfully, through fiscal stewardship, they're in a good position. They've talked to senior levels of government about being partners, and they have an incredible donor base that have stepped up to support them.
You've got that huge lawn just to the north of the Festival Theatre. Why not build an amphitheater on the slope and have people just out on the lawn? Every statistic I've seen says that it's not impossible, but very difficult, if not close to impossible, to catch this virus outdoors.
So that is one of the things that you'll probably see them look at next year. Because of all the productions being teched and built and auditioned and, of course, rehearsed for indoors, by the time they canceled it, it was probably tough to pivot for this year. But heading into next year, those are some of the things they're looking at doing, using the natural park setting within Stratford. And you're right, Lower Queen's Park is a stunning place to have it. Upper Queen's Park near the main theater would be great. So they are looking at all those venues. And I think in the next, I'd say 4 to 8 weeks, you're going to hear the Stratford Festival consult with our community and then come out with what will be a pretty grand vision of how they could do theater differently starting next year.
One of the other things that I think that you tried hard to do, I think in concert with University of Waterloo, is really become a tech-oriented place. You've had a bunch of conferences. You've got some joint ventures. Tell me what's happening there.
So over 10 years ago, the city partnered with the University of Waterloo to build their digital media and global business campus in Stratford. And that started with 16 students, now has over 850 enrolled in that program. It also has a master's program. We've made sure that we are incubating the next generation of user experience, interface, technology that's being deployed. A lot of those students are going to come from the Stratford campus. Along the way, we've continued to do other things. So Stratford is the official test city for autonomous cars in the province of Ontario.
Really, autonomous cars in Stratford? That's interesting. Why Stratford?
So it's an interesting thing because we built ubiquitous Wi-Fi over the entire city back in 2010 to backhaul our smart meter data for hydro, which was mandated by the province. We had this incredible network over the city. And when we started looking at what is the next generation of transportation and the research that was going into it, we realized that testing autonomous cars were going to be important. So we stuck our hand up, bid like every other municipality, whether it be tech cities like Waterloo and Ottawa, or research or automotive cities like Windsor, Oshawa, Hamilton, and we were actually supportive. I think it's because we're the Goldilocks. We're just the right size. We're 14 square kilometers, and it allows people to test. We had a private venture where the University of Waterloo and Renesas, an Asian company, came in and built a test track in Stratford, and that's being used by other companies. And we've tried to create this opportunity for people to come and try new technology here. We call it the Living Lab, and it has been very successful in doing so. We've digitized all our our stoplights in Stratford now so that they'll actually speak to the next generation of cars. So they know that they don't maybe turn red heading east-west right now because there's too many cars coming versus what the traffic would be coming north-south. And it's going to be an interesting concept to see that roll out over a number of years.
I'm trying to find how bad coronavirus has been in Stratford, and it looks like you've hardly had any.
So in Huron-Perth, which is our health unit region, there have been roughly, I believe, 129 cases. 5 of them resulted in death. Currently, there are, I believe, 6 cases across the entire region. Another 118 have been saved. In Stratford right now, we have 2 coronavirus cases, and the rest are in the counties of Huron and Perth. The most significant thing to think about is 2 weeks ago, and for a period of almost 3 weeks, there were no cases within this region whatsoever. Our medical officer of health, Dr. Miriam Clausen, and her staff have done a great job at educating our retailers, our hoteliers, our restaurateurs about respecting masks, and everybody's put a very strong presence in place, and it's been incubated with our guests, and that's why for most of the summer, we have gone without any or minimal cases of COVID-19, even though we probably welcomed in excess of 150 to 200,000 day tripping guests through our community.
So do you think that provincial response that wasn't exactly the same across the province, but other than timing differences of reopening was effectively the same across the province, is that appropriate? You know, what was right in Peel and Toronto, was it right to implement that in Stratford as well, or could you have not shut down your economy?
No, I think early on, I think the decision made was the right one because everything was evolving at a very quick pace. And I think it needed that little bit of time for us to look at. Now, in the longer term, I think now we've been educated over the last 5 months, 6 months, that I think the Premier's response, which is maybe to look at Peel, Toronto, Ottawa, some of the high infection areas and say, look, you guys are going to have to step back and do so. Maybe university towns like Western or London and what's going on there, maybe they have to be reeled back. But let's not take all of us and paint us with the same brush. And I think that's the level of experience you get when you have been through this so far. And hindsight's always perfect. And I think that's giving us some pretty good indication of what we need to do in the future.
I know the statistic it's not today, but for the first couple of months, it was something like 80% of all the deaths occurred, regrettably, in long-term care facilities. And clearly, we've got an issue with long-term care. But if only 20% of mortality took place in the balance of the population, and those were primarily people that had pre-existing conditions, and we could have isolated them, again, I ask you, could you have not closed down the economy in Stratford and done okay?
Well, I think first of all, we're now dealing with a lot more information around coronavirus than we had then. A lot of the decisions which led to the economy being shut down happened in late March through April and into early May. Then they started to relax things. By then, things like the Stratford Festival, we're going to have a tough time opening back up because a lot of people were not going to be in a rush to go indoors. And we were still researching whether masks worked and didn't work, whether you were more susceptible indoors than out. You've alluded to some of that research today in our conversation. You're right. Outdoors is far better and safer. I think what's happened now is I think we can have those fulsome discussions and debates. And I would argue that going forward, we probably don't need to shut down our economy. They say the same as they might have to somewhere else. I think the other piece is we've seen it switch from seniors in long-term care facilities, which I think all of us want to make sure we look after, and it's now gone to our youth. And I think in our case, we're almost 35, almost 40% of our cases are in people under the age of 30. And it's going to be even worse in university towns. And I think that's our next frontier for education, is letting the young people understand that they might be invincible or think they are, but there could be long-term health impacts that while they recover from this, they could carry this with them for the rest of their life. And we need to stop them from being spreaders.
Yeah, no, I think that's unquestionably the case. Mortality is very low, if almost zero for younger people. But I'm hearing more and more issues in regards to vascular impacts, in fact, even strokes, blood clots, and long-term respiratory problems. So there's no question it is an issue. But you think about, and I just want to play the devil's advocate here for a second. If I was running or involved in the Stratford Festival, or one of your hoteliers or owners of a B&B, and I saw 2,500 people outdoors on the White House lawn, or a couple thousand people indoors in an arena at a rally in the United States, I'd be going, how come they're okay to do it? And we can't get a couple thousand people in the Stratford Festival enjoying Shakespeare.
So, Brian, here's the thing. Canadians are more cautious by nature. We don't have the same makeup in our belief about COVID as they do. There is more divisive black and white than what Canadians are. Polling shows that the vast majority of Canadians have taken this far more seriously than our cousins to the south. Even if we open back up the Stratford Festival tomorrow, I'm not sure whether or not we would be able to get 300 and 400 and 500 people into a theater to watch a performance. And I'm not sure we'd be able to do it this afternoon and tonight and tomorrow and the day after the next. I'm not sure we could do 982 productions like that in a year. So I think what we need to do now is figure out over the next couple of months how next year is going to look. Because I think even if we open back up the Stratford Festival next year, the overhang, the hangover, the aftermath of what people are going to think in Canada about what going into a theater is like is going to be different than in the US. And it's unfortunate that now maybe in the US, they've taken a different track and maybe a different leadership position on this.
Dan Mathieson, Mayor of Stratford, sounds like you've got the challenges ahead, but you have got a good strategy, and unquestionably, the people of Stratford are behind you, being elected 5 times. 2 years and 1 month from now, are you going to have your name on the ballot again for the 6th time?
Brian, I have a habit of never making that decision till the summer before. So I'll leave you guessing on that one, and we can always check in then.
Okay, I look forward to chatting with you again.
Right.
I've got listeners from across Southern Ontario tonight. Do you have a message for them, Mayor Mathieson?
I just ask all of you. I know that this has placed incredible hardship on you, both probably economically, but also mental health and of course socially with your family. Let's not lose sight of the fact that within the next year to 14 months, we can be through what could be 3 waves of this. We'll have significant advancements with vaccine and, of course, knowledge on the coronavirus. And I just ask all of you to continue to be vigilant, to listen to public health officials, to follow good advice, and practice social distancing, wearing masks, proper hygiene, and, of course, support and understanding for those that share a different viewpoint.
Dan Mathieson, the mayor of Stratford, thank you very much for joining us and telling us a little bit about your challenges. And if I could make one final comment, I, for probably 25, 30 years, visited Stratford at least once a year. My parents had the tradition of taking us to a couple different shows. Enjoyed Shakespeare and then some musicals and then some more modern stuff at the Avon Theatre, staying in a B&B and going to some of your restaurants and walking along the river and with my grandmother often playing bridge in a summer afternoon on a picnic table by the river. And I got to tell you, I think all of us should be going to Stratford next year and the year after to support this incredible city and the wonderful Stratford Festival, because it's going to have to make up this $20 million deficit that they've created of no fault of their own. And so I vote for a visit to Stratford, if not a couple, next summer. Thank you very much, Mayor Mathieson, for joining us. And that's the show for tonight. Thank you very much for joining us on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Good night, everybody.